But what if you haven't truly chosen yet? What if most of your choices are still reactions, camouflaged reflexes shaped by old pain? You were wounded, yes. You were betrayed, rejected, shamed. But are you still living from that place, building your identity around what hurt you instead of what you could become? Ask yourself, when someone raises their voice, do you meet them as an adult or as the child who once feared yelling? When you feel excluded, do you respond with clarity, or does the ghost of past abandonment hijack your voice? How many of your relationships begin with love but end in sabotage because old scars start scripting new stories? You say you want peace, but do you keep creating drama to feel alive? You say you want freedom, but do you keep clinging to the mask that once kept you safe? You say no one will hurt you again, but do you still hand them the power by refusing to carry what belongs to you? Jung did not promise a painless life. He offered something harder and truer: to become what you choose, not what happened; to carry your wounds in proportion, not be ruled by them; to confront the shadow, integrate the past, and stop projecting it into the present. So the question returns: will you keep letting history write your script, or will you finally take the pen back and become the author? Nothing and nobody will ever hurt you again, but only if you stop mistaking your scar for yourself. You live in a world obsessed with protection, alarm systems, legal boundaries, emotional armoring. But Jung's warning is quieter and sharper. Your greatest threat is not the next wound, but the last one unhealed. Pain does not disappear when ignored. It becomes structure. It shapes your tone, your choices, your reactions. You think you're protecting yourself, but are you just repeating the wound under a new name? Ask yourself how many of your decisions are driven not by desire, but by fear. How often do you say, "I'm fine," while your chest tightens and your voice retreats? How many boundaries are not sovereign choices, but desperate walls to keep people from touching what still hurts? Look at your patterns. You avoid love because intimacy once betrayed you. You chase success not for joy, but to silence the shame. You overwork, overgive, or overexplain, not because it's your nature, but because once being small or silent didn't keep you safe. Can you see it now? The wound still speaks through your habits, through your reflexes, through the version of you that shows up when you feel threatened. You've built a life around not being hurt again. But has it worked, or has it only made you numb, rigid, and alone? Jung called this the unfinished task of individuation: to integrate what was broken, not deny it; to stop letting ghosts run your life; to meet the wound, not to collapse into it, but to carry it with proportion. You will be wounded again, but it doesn't have to undo you. That is the promise, not that life will grow softer, but that you will grow stronger, so centered in self that no shadow, no critic, no memory can seize your center again. So ask yourself now, do you want safety or sovereignty? One isolates you, the other frees you. To understand how nothing and nobody will ever hurt you again, you must first understand the structures that have been hurting you all along from within. Jung did not see the psyche as merely wounded flesh to be bandaged, but as a living system whose architecture determines your freedom or your captivity. If you do not master these forces, they will master you. 1. Persona, the mask that hides the wound. You show the world your persona, the curated mask of competence, calm, and control. But beneath it lies fragility. How often do you perform confidence to avoid being questioned? Do you mistake politeness for peace, silence for strength? When you smile, is it expression or armor? This mask may have protected you once, but now it prevents connection. You cannot be loved through a disguise. 2. Shadow, the pain you refuse to admit. Everything you disown, rage, grief, fear, sinks into the shadow. But it does not vanish, it sabotages. Have you ever erupted in anger that felt disproportionate? Do you shut down when touched by tenderness? Does your silence sometimes feel like suffocation, not peace? That's your shadow rising, not to destroy you, but to be reclaimed. Until you face it, you will keep wounding others and calling it protection. 3. Complexes. The child still in charge. Complexes are emotional knots, trauma fragments from your past that hijack your reactions in the present. One harsh word, and suddenly you feel 10 years old again. A small disappointment, and you spiral into abandonment terror. Someone sets a boundary, and you interpret it as betrayal. This is not weakness, it's memory trapped in your nervous system. But if the child keeps holding the steering wheel, your life will keep crashing in familiar ways. 4. Projection, the mirror you mistake for reality. You cast your unhealed wounds onto others. You think they are untrustworthy because you still haven't faced the betrayal. You idolize their strength because you haven't claimed your own. How many arguments are you having with ghosts? How many people are you punishing for pain they didn't cause? How often are you sure this is just how they are, when, in truth, it's how you were once hurt? Until you take back the projection, you cannot see others or yourself clearly. 5. The self, the center that integrates it all. Jung's ultimate aim was not perfection, but wholeness. The self is not the persona, not the shadow, not the complex. It is the center that holds them all in proportion. The self says, yes, I was wounded, but I am not that wound. The self allows you to feel grief without drowning in it, rage without being ruled by it, fear without fleeing. The self is not an idea, it is a posture of sovereignty. When you live from the self, you do not erase the past. You carry it without collapse. So ask yourself now, are you still hiding behind persona? Still blaming shadow? Still letting the child complex dictate adult moments? Still seeing through projection and calling it truth? Or have you begun the harder work of individuation, where every part is faced, integrated, and held by a center that cannot be shaken? This is Jung's promise. You will be hurt again. People will disappoint you. Life will wound. But if you are no longer ruled by persona, hijacked by complex, possessed by shadow, or blinded by projection, then the pain ends where it begins, in you. It does not spread, it does not define, and it does not destroy. And in that moment, when the wound has voice but no rule, you can finally say with truth, nothing and nobody will ever hurt me again. These ideas are not abstract. They are lived every day in quiet moments, missed chances, and broken patterns. If you want to know whether your unhealed pain still rules you, look not at your thoughts, but your reflexes. What you call normal may in fact be the choreography of an old injury you've never faced. 1. Romantic relationships. Old wounds in new faces. You say you want intimacy, but what happens when someone gets close? Do you suddenly feel overwhelmed and pull away? Do you become anxious, needing constant reassurance? Do you sabotage the relationship before they can leave you? The partner hasn't wounded you. Your old wound is using them as a screen. You flinch not from their touch, but from the ghost of someone who once betrayed your trust. How many people have paid for what they didn't break? 2. Work, the inner critic in disguise. A colleague gives you feedback. Your chest tightens. You spend the rest of the day replaying the conversation, defending yourself in your head. Was the criticism truly cruel, or did it awaken the voice of an old authority figure, parent, teacher, boss, who made you feel small? Are you responding as an adult with proportion or as a child terrified of being shamed again? Work becomes a stage for reenactment, not growth. Your fear of failing is not about the job, it's about a past humiliation you still haven't integrated. 3. Family, the role you never resigned from. You go home for the holidays, and within hours you are defensive, withdrawn, or overly accommodating. You promised you'd be different this time, but the moment your mother comments on your life or your father remains silent, you regress. Why do you become the peacemaker, the rebel, or the invisible one again? Who do you become at that dinner table, and how much of that is your adult self? The family dynamic activates old scripts. Until you rewrite them, they will keep performing through you no matter how far you've come elsewhere. 4. Friendship. Fear masquerading as loyalty. You have friends, but do you trust them? When they cancel plans, do you assume they're tired or that they're abandoning you? When they succeed, can you celebrate them, or does envy expose a hidden sense of lack? When they set boundaries, do you respect them or feel hurt like a child being punished? These aren't just emotional reactions, they are the past using present relationships as rehearsal space. How many friendships have you strained with suspicion that wasn't about them at all? 5. Solitude. Silence as a threat. You finally get a day to yourself, and instead of rest, you feel restless. Do you reach for your phone, the TV, food, anything just to drown out the quiet? What rises in the silence that you cannot bear to face? Is it the grief you've postponed? The memory you've avoided? The truth about your loneliness? Solitude is not the threat, the wound is. But until you face what haunts you in stillness, you'll keep filling your life with noise, wondering why peace never arrives. So ask yourself now, how many of your problems are not problems at all, but repetitions of pain unhealed? How many of your decisions are scripts, not choices? How many of your relationships are shaped more by memory than by reality? You may have called this life normal, but Jung challenges that notion. Normal is often just familiar, and familiar is often just wounded. If you keep reacting, collapsing, performing, avoiding, you are not free. You are still being governed by the wound. But if you begin to see these examples not as failures but as signals, then the work can begin. Each trigger is an invitation. Each reaction a map. Each collapse a mirror. Not to shame you, but to wake you. Because until you name it, you cannot claim it. And until you claim it, it will keep claiming you. And in that unspoken contract, the wound wins. But the moment you meet the reaction with clarity, the pattern with pause, the memory with adult presence, that is the moment the cycle breaks. And when the cycle breaks, you don't just survive, you reclaim. That is the difference. That is the line. That is when you begin to live, not as a wound, but as a sovereign. If the wound governs your life, it does not do so by announcement. It works through systems. Through breath, held thoughts, repeated reactions, automatic. The ghost does not shout. It whispers through your body, your story, your silence. If you want sovereignty, you must trace how it operates. 1. Physiological. The body recites what the mind avoids. Your nervous system is the first to remember. Why does your chest tighten before anyone says a word? Why does your stomach knot when you hear, "We need to talk"? Why do your hands clench during conflict, even when nothing is truly at risk? You may think you're over it, but your body disagrees. Trauma is not just memory, it is muscle. The unintegrated past recycles itself as reflex. Unless you bring awareness to the body's cues, it will keep preparing for war in every disagreement, every delay, every silence. Ask yourself how many of your physical responses are not reactions to the present, but rituals from an old battlefield. 2. Cognitive. The mind that justifies the prison, your thoughts follow the path of the wound. I can't trust anyone. If I speak up, I'll be punished. They're probably mad at me. You don't call these thoughts trauma, you call them common sense. But Jung warned the unconscious often disguises itself as certainty. You are not thinking, you are obeying. These are not insights, they are echoes. How many of your core beliefs are just clever masks for fear? 3. Emotional. Flood or freeze, but never freedom. The unprocessed wound floods your emotions. A simple no from someone you love triggers shame or rage. A missed call spins you into anxiety. Criticism sends you spiraling not because of what was said, but because of what it means to the part of you still stuck in that old hurt. You feel too much, or you feel nothing at all. Either way, you're not present. You're in the past re-experiencing what was never resolved. Ask, when you get emotional, who's actually feeling, your adult self or the exiled part still waiting for someone to understand? 4. Behavioral repetition as religion. You repeat the same habits, tell the same stories, attract the same pain. You overextend, hoping to be loved. You isolate, hoping not to be abandoned. You explode, then apologize, then explode again. This is not personality, it is pattern. And pattern, Jung says, is the footprint of the unconscious. You may call it how I am, but look closer. Is it choice or is it compulsion? How many of your daily actions are the wound acting out its own script? 5. Projection, the mirror you keep mistaking for the enemy. What you don't face in yourself, you see everywhere. You call others manipulative while you hide your own need for control. You accuse them of being selfish while denying your hunger. You believe they'll leave you because part of you already abandoned yourself. Every person becomes a screen onto which your unintegrated pain is cast. Until you own what's yours, you'll keep fighting shadows and blaming the mirror. Ask, who are you really angry at? Who are you really afraid of losing? Is it them or the younger version of you still waiting to be chosen? 6. Ethical. The pain you refuse becomes the burden others must carry. This part is most sobering. Your partner absorbs your withdrawal. Your children inherit your silence or outbursts. Your friends carry your mistrust. You think your wounds are private, but Jung insists the unconscious always leaks. Pain unclaimed becomes pain transferred. The hurt you bury becomes the inheritance of those closest to you. So ask yourself plainly, who is carrying what you refuse to hold? These 6 mechanisms, body, mind, emotion, behavior, projection, and ethics, form the invisible system of suffering. They do not announce themselves. They become normal, and that is the tragedy. Pain becomes your pattern, your posture, your identity. But here is the mercy, inside the severity. Systems can be dismantled. You can listen to your body instead of fearing it. You can question your thoughts instead of obeying them. You can feel with proportion instead of drowning. You can change behavior instead of defending it. You can reclaim your projections and see others clearly. You can carry your own pain instead of handing it to those you love. The wound does not have to rule you, but you must be willing to track it, to sit with its systems, to walk through the map of its mechanics until you find the source and name it. And the moment you name it, you create distance. Not detachment, not denial, distance. Enough space to choose. And that is where sovereignty begins. Not in perfection, but in awareness deep enough to pause, to choose presence over reflex, to answer as the self, not as the wound. That is when the machine breaks. And in the stillness that follows, you will finally know nothing and nobody will ever hurt you again. Not because harm disappears, but because your suffering no longer runs the system. You do. Insight without practice is decoration. You can read Jung, quote Jung, even believe Jung. But if you don't practice what the wound demands to be integrated, it remains in control. You say you want freedom, but have you trained for it? Sovereignty is not a gift, it is a discipline. Here's how you begin. 1. Track the pattern, not the excuse. Start where the wound speaks loudest, your daily reactions. When did your body tighten today? When did you overreact and later regret it? What harmless moment left you spiraling for hours? These are not coincidences. They are breadcrumbs. Follow them. Trace them back. The real trigger is rarely the present. It's the echo. Ask, what old story does this moment remind me of? Who am I really reacting to? 2. Insert the breath between trigger and reaction lives a space. Most never enter it, but sovereignty lives there. Your boss criticizes you. Pause. Your partner withdraws. Pause. Your child misbehaves. Pause. The breath gives you back the moment. It interrupts the reflex long enough to let the adult speak instead of the wound. Ask yourself, can you delay the collapse by 3 seconds? That pause may change your life. 3. Reclaim the shadow. What you reject controls you. What you name, you reclaim. You were taught to fear your anger, so now it leaks sideways. You learned to hide your need, so now you manipulate for it. You buried your sadness, so now joy feels thin, performative. Find the traits in others that trigger you most. What if they're yours? What if the anger, neediness, arrogance you condemn is your disowned self? Jung said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. So make it conscious." Own the trait. Channel it cleanly. Let anger become boundary. Let sadness become depth. Let need become honest request. Ask, what part of yourself have you exiled for survival, and are you ready to invite it back with responsibility? 4. Dialogue with the wound. Silencing the pain doesn't heal it. Engaging it does. Set a chair for the part of you that was hurt. Speak aloud. Let it answer. Write a letter to the version of you that was abandoned, humiliated, shamed. Let them reply. Enter the dreamscape. What symbols arise? What messages are repeated? Active imagination is not fantasy, it is integration. You meet the wound where it lives, in symbol, in story, in the felt realm beneath logic. Ask if your wound could speak. What would it beg you to finally hear? 5. Repair the pattern. You will mess up. You will lash out, collapse, project. But now you know what it is, and knowing gives you a choice: repair or repeat. Go back to the person you hurt. Not with justification, but with ownership. Say, that was my wound, not your fault. Say, I reacted from fear, not truth. The first repair is the hardest. It humbles you, but it also rewires you. Each apology becomes scaffolding for the adult self. You show your system we don't obey the wound anymore. Ask, will you treat your mistake as proof of failure or as evidence of awakening? 6. Conserve your energy. Wounds leak energy into defensiveness, into people-pleasing, into avoidance. Each of these drains your capacity for joy, focus, and love. You don't need more time, you need fewer leaks. Stop rehearsing past grievances. Stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding. Stop performing wholeness and start practicing it quietly, honestly, daily. Ask, how much of your exhaustion is self-inflicted by serving a pain you refuse to name? 7. Set boundaries without blame. A sovereign doesn't need to punish to protect. When distrust rises, say, "This is my wound. I need time." When anger flares, say, I need space, not because I hate you, but because I want to respond, not react. Boundaries are not walls. They are adult choices spoken with clarity. They say, I carry this wound now. You don't have to. Ask who in your life has been made to carry what you won't face, and how will you stop the pattern beginning today? 8. Rehearse sovereignty. Every day, imagine the moment that usually undoes you. The silence, the rejection, the tone of voice. Now rehearse the pause, rehearse the breath, rehearse the adult voice that speaks without collapse. When the moment comes, and it will come, you will not improvise. You will remember. This is not fantasy. This is training. You've trained your entire life to survive. Now train to stay, to remain whole, even when threatened, especially then. Ask, are you waiting for sovereignty to just happen? Or will you rehearse it until it becomes your reflex? Application is where theory becomes body. It's where the insight leaves the page and enters your nervous system. Not all at once, but slowly, daily, relentlessly. You track, you pause, you reclaim, you repair, you conserve, you set boundaries, you rehearse. And every time you do, the system breaks a little more. The wound loses a little grip. The voice of the self gets louder. And you become a little freer. Until one day, without announcement, you will find yourself in the same old situation, but responding with new breath, new calm, new clarity. And in that moment, you will know. Nothing and nobody will ever hurt you again. Not because they no longer try, but because you no longer abandon yourself. You've been taught to measure healing by how little something hurts. But Jung offers a different standard. Measure it by how much power it still holds over your choices. You don't need to eliminate pain, you need to stop obeying it. So ask yourself, when the old wound flares, do you freeze or do you pause? When criticism lands, do you collapse or respond with clarity? When love invites you in, do you reach or retreat? You've seen how the wound embeds itself into your breath, your posture, your tone, your silence. But now you've also seen the map out. You know the machinery, persona, shadow complex, projection. You've felt the trap of repetition. And you've practiced the way forward, observation, breath reclamation, repair, boundaries, rehearsal. This is not easy work. It is daily humbling, often unseen. But it is the only work that frees you. You don't heal by waiting for time to pass. You heal by interrupting the loop, by asking what part of me is speaking now, the self or the scar, by remembering pain is a messenger, not a master, by insisting my boundaries are not punishment, they are stewardship. You are not what happened to you, but you are what you choose to do with it. So choose. Choose to face what you've been avoiding. Choose to carry what you've made others hold. Choose to reclaim the part of you that still flinches, still runs, still hides. Name the one wound that still writes your story, and write a new line today. Jung doesn't promise ease, he promises integrity. You will be hurt again. But next time, you will not hand over the pen. You will not collapse into the old script. You will not abandon yourself. And in that unshakable presence, you will finally know, nothing and nobody will ever hurt you again. Not because the world changes, but because you have.